Hi everyone, I'm Tim Vonnart, better known as Vonnart Online, and welcome to my weekly Wednesday live stream. I do these every Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Central Time to discuss art, do an art demo, and just have fun in general and maybe be someone to draw with. So today we're going to be talking about setting goals for the new year, and this doesn't mean specifically 2019, I just mean in general. I think January of each year is a good time for artists to kind of reflect on what they've done in the past, look at where they're going in their future, and then write down what their goals are. But what happens in that time period of people reflecting and then putting down goals is they write ones that I think they will hit, and then they write a lot that they tend not to. And we're going to talk about how to create goals that are realistic, that are achievable, and that will make you feel accomplished when you hit those goals. Okay. And I will be drawing at some point. I know for at least for this first part, I'm going to be, you know what, I might even change this. Not to make my face super big, but until I start actually drawing, oh, that is it's a little much. We're gonna put that box over here. Which one is the box? There we go. Oh man, let me push this back a bit. Yeah, and I can show off my new giant canvas in the background here, or I guess this is a better way to look at it. Okay, so let's discuss this, and then I will get to drawing. And let me zoom out. I don't know why I'm so zoomed in on my face right now. I gotta edit the properties. But I hope you guys are having a good 2019 so far. I know that sometimes the end of the year can be a tough one for a lot of people. There we go. You can see my lovely basement walls. Okay, so let's talk about this. So when you're setting goals, I'm going to be splitting this discussion into, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, to 5 different parts. The first one is what are good art goals to have? The second one, I'm going to be talking about why a lot of art goals fail. The third ones are my suggestions on what you should add to yours. You don't have to, but I think it's important to at least consider them. The fourth one is for if you're an artist that already kind of have as an establishment or somewhat of a career. These are things that I challenge you to do or to think about. And then the fifth one is the goals that I'm setting for myself, and maybe that will inspire you to create the ones that you want to create. So as I'm going through these, I'll kind of give my little bullet point mentions here, and then I will go to the chat and we'll discuss back and forth before moving on to the next one. So if you have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat, and I'm going to be going back and forth between my notes and the chat after I list out my bullet points. So the first one is setting actual art goals. I'm not going to be one of those people that tell you specifically what to do, because I think a lot of setting art goals comes from you as an artist, where you're at in your art career, and then establishing what is realistic. And I'm going to help you kind of understand what that means. So as artists, we get really excited about certain projects or certain ideas that we have in our head. But that doesn't always mean that they're going to come to fruition, or that they are the best ideas, or that it is something that we should pursue. And I've caught myself in this all the time. But there's a difference between excitement and passion. I feel like as artists, we all have a certain level of passion for what we do, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're always excited about what we're doing. And maybe that will make sense if I put it into a more specific term. So like, if I'm working on a project that is, well, like swordplay, I'm working on a illustrated novel, there are some days where I'm not excited when I'm working on the page that I'm working on, but it's almost like a job. It feels, honestly, sometimes like a chore. And that's where my passion will kick through, and I'll still get it done because I'm passionate about drawing, but I've lost some of the excitement that I initially had for it. And that will happen, and that will happen with especially bigger projects. But I always kind of implore the idea that if you are excited about something, do that first. Like, get that down on a paper, especially if it's a smaller drawing or something that you can complete within a day or a couple days. do that right now and make that one of your top priorities, because you'll never be as excited about that idea as you are in that moment. And your passion plus your excitement, when those two mix, I think you get a really good, genuine product that you create, or not product, I should say piece that you create, because it was infusing the best of both worlds. And I'm not even talking about the technical side or the creative side of art. I'm talking purely about your excitement and the passion that you have just for creating art. So when those two mix, I think you get some great art. But I need to at least explain that excitement does not equal your passion, because you can be passionate about drawing without being excited about what you're working on. And that is something that I think we have to be very aware of when we're creating our projects or working on pieces, and distinguishing where do I kind of lie on that spectrum. So the second one is time management. I see way too many, especially younger artists, like list down what they're going to do every day for like an entire month, or if they do like a 30-day challenge. And I'm sure a lot of us know how many of those actually fail or how many of those actually succeed. And more often than not, they typically fail. It's because we're creating these unrealistic expectations of who we are and what we're going to be. It's almost, and I put this in my failure talk a little bit, it's like we create alternate realities of who we are. And that alternate reality version of us is going to be our future version of us. And that person is going to be dedicated. They're going to wake up early. They're going to be doing these daily challenges. And I don't ever want anyone really to put this weird pressure on themselves that they normally wouldn't on a day-to-day basis. But it's like you create this weird facade of who you're going to be. So like take yourself into account and put that into your goals of, especially with time management. Are you someone that can sit down for an hour and work even when you don't want to? And if one of your goals, this year is drawing for like 2 hours every day, is that a realistic standard for you to try to set and follow? Or maybe something that I would kind of rewrite it as would be draw something every day, even if it's something small. That way there's no time kind of encapsulation of like, I have to be here. And then when you miss one day, it kind of breaks the whole cycle. But if you say I want to do something really small, and then let's say at the end of the day, you just were super busy, a friend came over that you haven't seen for a long time, whatever happens, like right before you go to bed, you literally scribble for like 5-10 minutes on your bedside. And then that still counts or registers as like you drew something that day. Now, I don't think that's a healthy habit to do every day, because I think you do need to invest a lot of time and passion and time into what you're doing to become a successful artist. And I don't want to make it seem like you don't, or that it's just going to come quickly. You really do have to invest a lot of time. And I think understanding your time management will be crucial for you as an artist, especially if you're a younger artist or you're just getting into the art game. That's something that you need to really focus on. And actually, that was my next actual art goal, would be something where you are managing what you're creating every day. And if it's something really small, that's great. Something that's really helped me is timing myself. And for an hour of every day, I'm going to be working on at least either my big piece that I'm working on, my swordplay drawing, or it could be something new. And I've actually been really good about that. And I'm kind of surprising myself. But kind of managing your time will help you manage your art career. So I almost want you to focus more on the time that you're spending on art first before you're thinking about the creative and technical and all that fun aspects of art. You really have to focus on how much time are you actually investing on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. The next one is something that I keep hearing not only artists, but I guess people that are successful in general talk about. It's waking up earlier. And it's the whole idea that we waste a lot of our time sleeping. And that's not to say that, sleeping isn't healthy. I do think you should get 6 to 8 hours of sleep every day. But I have that horrible habit of waking up at like 10. And yeah, I'm going to bed at really late hours. But it's something that I've always strived to do. Last year was to wake up in the single digits. And I know that sounds really lazy, especially if you don't understand where I'm coming from, or if you have a full-time job. I know, like right now, my boyfriend has a full-time job. He gets up at like 7:30 every day. He leaves and he comes back at 6. And it's almost like a 12-hour day, kind of, if you have to wake up earlier to take a shower or to wipe off your car, or especially because it's snowy here in Wisconsin, you have to warm it up. And there's like a lot of things that you do. And I think it's very easy for someone like me to fall into the habit of becoming lazy or like staying in bed longer than I should be. So something that I'm pushing myself to do now is setting an alarm and waking up at like 8 or 8:30 every day, even if I stay up till like 3 a.m. the night before. And like last night, I stayed up till about 5 or like 4:35 drawing, and I woke up at 11 and I kind of felt guilty. And it was one of those things where it's like, you know what? I'm going to let that one slide because I stayed up really late and I was working. But if this was a normal schedule, I want to go to bed around 2 or 3 and wake up around 8:30. And the more that I talk to other artists, it seems like when they wake up earlier, there's less distractions in their day. So they're able to focus on their art rather than focus on the things that tend to distract them. The next thing is, it's simple. Create something every day. And it kind of goes back to the thing I was just talking about, but it's something that I just want to reiterate because I find it very important. Okay, I'm going to go to the comments, and then I'm going to have a little discussion with you guys, and then we're going to talk about what I would consider why so many artists create goals that fail. So let's see here. And please put @Vonnart before your comment or question if you want to contribute to the conversation, because, you know what? I'll turn that down. I didn't realize how loud the music might be. I put it on like right before the stream started. Let me just turn that down. There we go. Okay, so let's see here. Rhapsode says, I actually have a strange reason to go into art. I actually drew a lot as a kid, but I have a purpose in picking up now, so I'm starting to studying art in college. Oh, I mean, that's kind of same thing with, I think, most of us. Oh, hey, Sudi, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. Oh, okay, so the music wasn't that bad. Then I'll turn it up just a little bit more. Sometimes it helps me relax when I have like ambient background noise while I'm talking. That way it like fills in the gaps of no talking, like that. Okay. It feels like you guys are very much into listening today, which is great. Eventually, though, I would like to start a discussion, not just me like spouting what I believe about setting goals. But I guess we'll just jump into the next category, which is why do a lot of goals, especially and more importantly for artists, fail? So the first one is we are overly ambitious. I think as a collection of people, I feel like artists especially talk a lot of talk, but don't like to do the walking. And it's unfortunately true for a lot of younger artists that have these big goals and ideas and dreams. And unfortunately, they always seem to come short because they're not aware of how much time or energy that will go into a project as large as their ambition. And it tends to kill it like very soon in the project. And oftentimes it's usually the artists themselves that kills it. It could just take like one outside voice that tells them they can't, and immediately it just melts. Everything that they built up of wanting to do something big and wanting to show off what they're able to create, it dies. And that goes back into what I was talking about earlier, where we often create this alternative reality version of ourselves or who we want to be. And if you guys watched Ellen DeGeneres, I was just talking to Sean about this, the Ellen DeGeneres comedy special, Relatable, she talks about how when she goes on vacation, she always packs for this like traveling version of herself, which she'll pack like books or things that she normally wouldn't do, but she feels like she has to because she's now traveling, and that's what travelers do. And I think the same thing is true for artists. We feel like we set these goals and these things for ourselves that aren't necessarily true of who we are as people, but we feel like that's what we should be doing. And I don't think that's a true statement or like a true goal setting mentality to be in when you're looking at yourself and the goals that you want to create for the new year. So I guess maybe for each of these failures, I'll also talk about how to kind of bring it in. For that one, I would definitely say be true to yourself. Take an honest look at where you are at in your career and how much time you are truly willing to dedicate per day. And are these goals something that would fit within that time range that you're giving yourself? And it may seem simple, but you would be surprised by when you really look at how much time we're investing in things, on how much we are putting way too much on our plate and we're chewing way more than we can possibly swallow. So keep it simple. I think something that really helped me at the end of last year was looking at everything I did in 2018 and being like, I had this giant focus lens when really I could have made it like much smaller. It could have been like this. I could have gotten most of what I wanted completed, and I feel like I could have had more focus, but instead I like broadened my net to be as large as possible, when really I should have been zoning in and focusing on like the things that really matter and the things that I need to be focused on if I want to get these goals that I have set for myself done. So I guess in that case, try your best not to be overly ambitious. I think it's good to dream big and have big ideas, but it's also equally important to act upon those ideas. The next failure would be unrealistic expectations of a life without any life happenings. You never know when a family member might die, when a friend may call you and need to hang out for the night. There will be things that intervene and interject your goal or your plan. And if you're someone that has all these goals and per day you're going to do all these things, and then all of a sudden a life event happens and that day is just like shut down, it tends to snowball, and then the days afterwards seem to be just as chaotic, and then you have this weird stress of feeling like you have to catch up because you missed a day, and that's where you can get a lot of these mental hangups of I'm not good enough, or I guess a lot of them is I'm just not good enough. And I think a lot of that is caused from us having these unrealistic expectations of how life is going to be and how we're going to manage and fit art into our life. And when those kind of fail, that's where I see a lot of artists kind of shut down. So expect life to happen. Expect weird interjections that you weren't prepared for and that you will have to deal with. And it could even be like dealing with a water bill, or let's say your furnace goes out, or something that just was not expected. So plan, what is that? What's that saying? Oh yeah, expect the unexpected. The next one is you are creating goals that are way too tight. You are creating goals that no one can complete. And somehow you expect this alternate reality version of yourself to complete all these goals, even though you've never hit these type of goals on this type of deadline before in your past. So for that one, add some breathing room. And this kind of goes along with what I just said about having to expect the unexpected. So have some allowance of your personal time. Maybe on the weekends, don't focus on art. Maybe if that is something that is, strenuous on you to have art be like a 7-day-a-week mindset, take a day off, whether that's Saturday or Sunday or even during the week, whatever it might be. Have a day where you're like, you know what, I'm not going to really work on art. Maybe I can think about it. Maybe I feel like it, I'll do it, but I don't want to feel obligated to do it, and I'm going to go out and see a movie, or I'm going to hang out with my friends, or do something where you are giving yourself some time to take care of yourself. And that's something that I think is a growing trend, and I'm glad that is kind of happening, because we're realizing that, your mental health is just as important as your physical health. So maybe on that day off, also maybe do some exercise, or do something where you're doing activities that are bettering yourself, whether it is your mind or your body. The next one is you're unaware of your own shortcomings. There are way too many artists that aren't aware that they aren't that good. And I'm not saying that to be cruel. I'm saying that to be honest, because there are way too many, especially this seems to be with like teenagers or like early 20s, where they just cannot see, they don't have the visual eye to recognize that their art isn't where it needs to be at technically, and they get frustrated why on social media they're not getting the likes or the recognition that they feel that they deserve, because in a weird way they feel entitled to it. And I think a lot of that has to do with, especially in America, where it's less of like working hard that gets you achievements and more of like finding shortcuts to get the reward. And I'll talk about that later on too. But you really need to be constructively critical of your own work. And I don't think it's something that is realistic to set a goal that doesn't fit within your technical capabilities. And that could be something like the drawing I just did was draw basically 300 arms and hands in one drawing. And I'm going to be sharing that probably later this week. I finished it and I am very excited about it. But if I would have done this goal for me when I was 21, I don't think it would have met the same standard or the same quality that I can hit now that I'm older and I have a bit more of a technical knowledge to it. And I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't be ambitious and do a 300 hand drawing when you're 18 or 19, but I think it's good to understand that if you are very unsure of even how to draw a hand, I think that would be the first step to hit, is like, okay, let me practice just drawing a hand, or maybe practicing anatomy in general, and really understanding where you are at in your technical understanding of things. And too often I think we lie to ourselves to think that we are better than we actually are. And it's not a bad thing. I'm very headstrong. I'm very stubborn as well. So I was definitely that person at 21. If you told me I can't draw something, I'd be like, oh, I'll prove you wrong. I'll do it. But I think it's also good to understand that you can't skip the fundamentals of art to become good at art. You really do have to focus on the fundamentals. So that would be my advice for that shortcoming. Okay, the next one is your goals are too specific. It could be something as like, I have to draw a comic page every day. I have to do a 30-minute warm-up that I'm going to record and put on YouTube every day. And you have all these like bullet point things that you're going to do, and they're very specific. Or it could be like, I'm going to draw a hand in every position every day, and I'm going to rotate it. Or I'm going to be drawing a mermaid every day in May because it's mermaid, and I'm really going to push myself to have each drawing be 4 hours minimum. And it's like, they're very specific goals. And I've always learned that with goals, you want to be more vague and broad in a sense, because you never know where you'll be in 6 months, and you might be working on a different project, or you might get a freelance project. Like even for me, I really wanted to do this Hollow Queen drawing, but I got work with Imagine FX that I have to have done by February, or by the end of February, essentially. So that now has taken priority. So my first goal of wanting to create Hollow Queen by the end of January has to take a back seat. And I work my goals in a way that it can adjust and kind of adapt to my life. And I think it's good for you guys to understand that goals don't have to be permanent or set in stone. They can change and adapt to the way your life is changing as well. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that they're a failure or that you aren't organized. That means you're actually probably more organized because you're ready for things to change. And if there's anything that I think most of us have learned about life, is nothing is constant. Things are always changing. And to have goals that are flexible as much as life is, I think is a good thing to keep in mind. The next one is something that my old roommate, Ashley Erickson, better known as Cloverkin, always used to talk about, and it's why she doesn't really share her goals. And that's because and this isn't even with art, this is with life in general. Everyone wants all the praise with none of the effort. So oftentimes when we're sharing the projects that we want to do, they could be like, let's say an illustrated novel that I've been talking about for so long. You hype it up so much because you want that feedback. You want that, oh, that sounds awesome. Oh, good job, blah, blah. So you get that release of chemicals that's like, okay, I finished it. I got the praise that I set out from doing this project. But in actuality, you haven't drawn anything. You haven't put pencil to paper, but you already received that praise. Well, I thank you, Akaji Flair, for following. But you already received that praise, so you feel like there's no need to continue. And this isn't all the time true, but I've seen it a lot where people will talk about doing something so much, and you tell them good job, or like, oh, I can't wait to see it, blah blah, or like, that sounds awesome, blah blah, and then it never happens. So I've been a lot better about being selective about how I share my goals, and being less specific, because that way it allows you to be flexible. Because when it's so rigid, I think that's where as artists sometimes we get caught up in ourselves, and that's where art becomes more of a chore rather than it should be more fun and it should be free flowing. And unfortunately, I don't think that is the case all the time when we talk to other people about what we're going to do before starting it. That's why I'm being very careful with this really large canvas I have behind me, because I've been telling people kind of what I want to do, but I'm also going to be going into it of just like free form. And it's going to be an underwater scene, but let's say I want to draw a clergy of alchemists that are also mermen and old, and I want to put them in the corner. I'm going to do it. I don't want to have like the set composition before I start, because I want it to be very freeing. And I think this will help me kind of break this rigidity that I've built for myself as an artist, where it's so structured nowadays. And that's, I think for me, I can understand how I work as an artist, and how I can work best as an artist is to not be so strict. And I think that kind of goes back to understanding who you are, not only as a person, but definitely as an artist. Okay. So yeah, I think that phrase was really important. All the praise, none of the effort. And too often we're looking for praise instead of falling in love with the effort. And that's something Pete Moorbacher always talks about, and especially in his workshop, is you got to fall in love with the process. If you don't enjoy the process, you won't enjoy what you're doing, essentially. The next one is too many artists copy others. They see what other people are doing that seems to be successful or seems to be working. You might be like, wow, this person only draws female busts and they are getting thousands of likes. And I want to be getting thousands of likes. I'm going to start drawing female busts. But what they don't understand is that a lot of these artists that generate all these likes, like they have a history of work that a lot of people don't know about. And they more often than not studied the fundamentals, and they went through the hard training of, working through art. And that's not to discredit them. I don't mean to do that, because I think there is a hustle that I respect, but you can't just copy another artist because they're successful and assume that you will receive the same success. You really have to find your own voice. And that actually goes into my next one, which is you're not working from your own voice, or you're not speaking with your own voice. And the reason that isn't successful or that doesn't work is because someone else is already speaking their true voice, and you are literally mimicking it in the same way that, like, when an iPod was first released and you had all these clones of it, everyone knows that the original iPod is the best one, and that these clone versions are kind of like subpar, or they just were there to make a buck, and it just doesn't feel genuine. And with art, it's even more transparent because it's very easy to recognize someone else's style when you're trying to like copy it almost verbatim, or word for word, when you're copying it almost exactly. And, the general public, especially people that are in the art world, can pick up on that, and they can recognize that you're kind of stealing someone else's voice and pretending like it's your own. So I recommend don't copying others. And my way of kind of fixing that is to trust your gut. And I know that so many people are going to tell you this, and trusting your intuition is so important, but good God, have I really experienced that in my own life. When I was told that pencil art couldn't be a thing and I couldn't make money from pieces that didn't have color in them, like, yeah, it kind of seeps into your brain, and it like plants these seeds of doubt. And unfortunately, sometimes a lot of us water those seeds and they grow into these, these forests of uncertainty and doubt. And then oftentimes we're lost wandering within them. And as you can tell, I love metaphors and talking in like pictorial dialogue. But I really do believe that if you always followed what other people told you, you would never find your voice. You would never find your style, and you'd never actually make it as an artist, because I believe the ones that really make it in the art world are the ones that followed their voice and were kind of stubborn about not listening to other people. And that's not to say that you shouldn't value constructive criticism or that you shouldn't value others' opinions, but you need to discern the difference between an opinion and constructive feedback. There have been a lot of people that told me not only the pencil thing, or like, when are you going to add color, but, oh, all your faces look the same, or, oh, you always do profile or center frame stuff. And there's always this feedback that it just feels like they're trying to break you down, or they're trying to like, it's like, know your place. Like, that's kind of what they're saying a lot of the times. But then I always respond back by like, I respect your feedback, but I'm going to continue doing this because I really enjoy doing this, and it challenges me in ways that I don't think is visible to you. And it kind of goes into this whole argument of like, when does stubbornness actually hurt you? And I think it's when you're not able to critique yourself. If you're not able to critique yourself and look at your drawings and say, okay, how can this have been better if I would have worked on this again? And then move on to the next piece, because I think the ones that cannot see the flaws or the faults in their own work also tend to fail. So something to keep in mind. The next one is something we've already talked about, but poor time management. But I'm going to keep bringing that up because I feel like that is so important as artists, and most of us are horrible at doing it. No offense to us as an art community, but I feel like it's true and we all know it. All right, the next one is if financial success is your priority. Guess what? Usually that creates unauthentic art, and I don't think that comes as a shocker or surprise to anyone. I don't think we should be working for the dollar. And there have been times in the past where I would create a drawing for like example, because I don't like to say it without actually explaining it. I drew a fox last year because I went to conventions and I wanted to draw more animals because I was interested. And I took a poll on which animal I should draw. And literally every single person said fox that I asked. So I was like, you know what? I think this will be received well, especially at conventions. And I think it will help me create more financial stability for myself. And yeah, the initial intention may not have been the best. I think it was trying to get and generate a reaction that would be positive and would be received well. And when I was working on the fox, though, I really enjoyed working on it because I made it my own journey of figuring out how I would draw the fur and how I would create this animal. And let me see if I have it. Oh, I do. So this was the fox I created. And it kind of came this inner joke for myself that it's speared down the center and it's dying because when I did this poll, I felt like it was overkill. So when I drew this fox, I wanted to draw this fox that it's kind of like my my reaction to this poll and how it became kind of this truer statement. And I tried to make it my own, but I still look at it and feel like it was genuine, even though my initial intent didn't seem as genuine. But since I love the process, I feel like it helped me bring out the creative side of me. And I've learned not to do that as much anymore because I'm realizing more and more that the art, and here's the weirdest part. Are you guys ready for the secret? The art that will tend to make you the most money may not be the ones that you're most passionate about or the ones that you're most excited about, but they're the ones that will look the best in someone's home. And I know I've talked to so many con artists, especially where they get down because they feel like the drawings they invest 100 hours in isn't really a good seller. And the ones that they just did on a whim one day is like their number one. And that's, I need everyone to hear it. It's like, that's okay. You need to have both. And this goes back into a talk that I heard from, oh, why can I not remember her name? I'll remember it, and I'm sure I'll remember it as I'm talking and I'll mention it. But she basically said, there is art that is like candy and vegetables. Your vegetables are the ones that you really are passionate about, that you invest a lot of time, that is technically savvy, that is executed well, has good composition. And then you have your candy, which is very simple, easy to read, something digestible to the mass public, and something that would look good on a wall in a kitchen or a family room. And she basically was mentioning that you have to have both, because if you only have candy, then you're saturating your audience or your viewers with so much sweet and sugar that it actually is bad for them in the long run. And if you have only vegetables, well then, I mean, I enjoy vegetables a lot, but she was saying about how there's no flavor, there's no sweetness to it. And sometimes it can leave you feeling overwhelmed or it's too much. So you need to have both and mix them to have a good art kind of portfolio, which I agree with to an extent, but it's interesting how she explained it. And oh my gosh, I feel like I need to look it up. You know what? I'll put it somewhere in the chat when I remember. It'll hit me. But yeah, and I feel like I'm really trying to focus on more vegetables because I did a lot of candy in previous years. Not even intentionally, really, but they were fun for me, but they were simple. They would take like 4 to 8 hours, really, and I'd be done, and I'd create them in a night. And then a lot of those had become my best sellers at cons. And I'm able then to work on these vegetable pieces, which take me a lot more time, but they don't sell it well at cons, but they feel good for me. And I enjoy having them alongside the candy pieces, because then it shows off that not only do I like to have fun with my art, which would be candy, but I also take art very seriously and I try to challenge myself. And I think it's good for an artist to showcase both. So that would be my last one on the failure list that I created. So let me go ahead and read any comments you have. I'm sure there are a lot. I kept seeing my little black bar pop in. I'm going to turn this music down though. Okay, so let me answer some of your questions, and then I'm going to get into my suggestions for goals that maybe you would add to your list. And I'm keeping it pretty vague, but I think these are good goals for you to add. But first, let's talk about the discussion on why artists fail at the goals that they set. Let me see where it starts. Okay, Fem says it's going to be a big year, so a big Tim cam is in order. Yeah, I'm talking you full screen here. This might even be the whole stream. Thank you, Cold Lemonade, for following. Because I wasn't really prepared to draw anything today. I did like a quick sketch of like this little floaty figure, but I feel like it's more important for me to discuss this with you than to like draw something that is kind of on, what's that called, where you shoot from the hip. And while yeah, that's interesting, I think that this is actually more important. So let's talk about that. Hey Sudi, happy. Oh, that's way too soon. But yes, happy New Year to you, Sudi. ZA, it's definitely relaxing. Okay. Oh, the music, yes. Sarah Bear says, I was planning to do one sketch every day, but I already missed 2 days. Okay, great example. So for you, Sarah, I think a better goal, instead of saying I need to draw one sketch every day, it would be I need to draw something every day, small or big. And it could be 10 minutes, it could be 2 hours. But drawing something is keeping me on track. And I don't think it even has to necessarily be good. I think just getting in the mindset of I'm going to be drawing every day, even if it's a 5-minute scribble, it becomes a habit after a while, you know? And what do they say? It takes like 21 or 22 days or something for it to become a habit, but you have to do it every day for 22 days. So maybe shift your goal into wording it different. Zad says, I must agree with you. Creating something every day moved me forward so fast. In my opinion, especially beginners should do this at least 1 hour per day. Agreed. I'm a little more strict on myself, but I think I've created a lifestyle for myself where I need to be investing at least 3 hours every day into drawing. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but typically my days are I draw when I'm home by myself. And then after most of the roommates go to bed, I usually work from like midnight or 1 until like 3 or 4. And I have like 2 time slots every day that I draw. And the older you get, I feel like we get more expectations or more, what would that be called? More duties that we have to take care of, whether it's if you get married or if you have a family or things that, yeah, may not have been included in your life before where you had all this free time, but then the older you get, that free time becomes smaller and smaller, essentially. Next is Pro BMFK says, I've started a bullet journal recently. I found it's a good way to stay on track. I see a lot of people doing that, and it seems to be working for them. Larissa says, you can call me Marissa or Riz. I will do that. I've been struggling with pushing out more finished paintings for my portfolio for a summer internship, but find myself being overwhelmed by the idea of making something good enough. I hear this all the time. I think I'm just scared nothing I will make will be good enough, and that stops me from even starting. I guess my question is how to start an ambitious painting, for instance, when I need to include a whole lot of things like interesting perspective, beautiful rendering. Just a long question, sorry. I'm also a junior in illustration art school. Okay, let's talk about that. I understand where you're coming from. I am way too bullheaded to think that what I'm doing isn't good enough. I think it's because you, in the end, get to decide, is this good enough? It's when we let other people influence us so much that their opinion of what we do becomes the blanket of, is this good enough? Instead of looking to our gut, which is something I want to reinforce over and over and over, is it doesn't matter if it's good enough. It matters if it was, I don't want to say it's good enough for you. That sounds really cheesy. It matters if you felt good about creating it, if you felt like you learned something from it, you feel like you pushed yourself artistically or technically or creatively. If there was something that you got out of it, then I think it was worth doing. Now, for a really ambitious project, like literally I keep looking at this 6-foot canvas and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to just jump into this with no expectation. I don't need it to be pretty. I don't need it to impress anyone. I'm doing this for myself. And it becomes really weird when you see artists shift from like wanting to impress others to wanting to impress themselves. And when they start to get more on the shift of wanting to impress themselves, they start to create work that feels not only more their own, but feels very unique and strong and confident because they don't necessarily need to impress anyone. They're not And a lot of the times, these are artists that aren't even doing it for money. They're literally just doing it because that is what they want to do. And with this piece, I don't really plan on making money with it because it's going to take me like 500,000 hours or, even like 1,000 hours it might take. But I'm okay with that because I'm not looking to make money from that drawing. I'm doing that for me because I need to challenge myself or else I'll lose it. I'm one of those people where I need to be challenged or else I feel weird in this what is that called? The monotony of life where I'm one of those people that I need to be challenged. And more often than not, I need to challenge myself because you can't look to the outside world to challenge you when only you know what is actually challenging for yourself. But for you, if you feel like you're scared that nothing will be good enough and it stops you from even starting, my advice to you would be is, thank you, Nard Dog, for 227 for following, is to let go of that stress. Take it from your brain, let it go. And when you're looking at your painting, and this goes into actually what I want to talk about in the next segment, but it kind of goes into why am I painting this? And these are the questions that we don't ask ourselves enough. But and I'll talk more about this in the next section. But essentially, when I'm drawing something that I feel like my collector drawing with my 300 hands, I feel so proud of it. Not because I think it will make me a lot of money, because to be honest, I don't think a lot of people at conventions want this kind of really creepy 300 hand drawing hanging in their house. But I think it shows that we as artists are capable of creating something that is so bizarre and so wild. And I want to explore that more. I want to push myself to create things that kind of broaden the horizons of what maybe we thought was capable. Especially as a pencil artist, I feel like too often we get pushed to the side as, the preliminary sketcher. It's not as serious. And I want to kind of raise the awareness that I think pencil art could be just as established as in painting or as something that has color even, and that's something that I'm very passionate about setting out. And for you, I want to just say you are good enough. And I just want everyone, I guess, to hear that, not just you, but for everyone, you are good enough to do the drawings you want to do. And don't let someone else tell you you cannot. And if anything, keep those people close, because the people that challenge us oftentimes are the most important to us because they challenge what we believe in, our morals, our passions. And if we are challenged, like if you're like myself, I like to prove them wrong, or I like to step up to the challenge. And it's been something that I've recognized throughout the years, and I want you guys to start recognizing it early as well. So you've got it, just stay with it and believe in your guts. And ProBMFK says that's what Discord is for, constructive critiques. Exactly. And actually, we have the Discord community below where we have a channel specifically for critiques, but I'm also doing a critique stream at the end of the month. If you would like to be critiqued by myself, I'm doing probably like 8 critiques, 6 to 8. I'm going to be randomly selecting them from the Discord channel, and I'm going to be giving my honest feedback and explaining how I think this could be improved upon in a constructive manner, not in a tearing you down manner. So I know a lot of artists are interested in that, so you can find that below. Tigel says, yes, people can't see that they are horrible failures at art. Not me, of course. I'm like the best there is. No flaws here. Exactly. Tigel is the best artist, and we need to learn from him more. Hey, Ella. Ella says, I started Drawtober this year knowing that I did it last year, but I couldn't complete it, and I got extremely disappointed with myself for it. And I still have a hard time starting it again, but it was also the most stressful month I've ever had in my life, with at least 2 exams every week, so it was like an impossible goal to begin with. I know exactly where you're coming from, having not only doing Drawtober and doing a different medium every day, but also hosting it and trying to post 30 different artists every day. That was a lot, and that was one of my goals, is to plan Drawtober better. And what I'm going to do is have, instead of a drawing every single day, because that kind of goes against a lot of the goals and the goal mindset that I'm explaining to you guys. I think it's good for every artist to do it at least once. But this year, we're going to be doing, instead of every day, we're going to be having one basically prompt every week of October. And I think that'll create a higher quality of art and hopefully let people enjoy their October more. Because for the past 3 years, I haven't really enjoyed my October because I'm so busy running Drawtober and trying to get my own drawings done every single day, which is a lot. So I totally understand where you're coming from. Fem says, I definitely think we as people, not only artists, need to be able to take a step back sometimes and look at our goals after a couple of weeks and months and see how our life has changed. Sometimes we just notice only after a couple of days that our goals are just too ambitious and life is just getting in the way of doing something every day. So then we shouldn't be afraid to take a moment and slightly change our goals without guilt, in my opinion. So instead of trying to do something every day, yes, I think this is going back to keeping your goals flexible. It's okay to bend and change them as your life changes. And I think that's a good observation. Pro BMFK says, I have taken a lot of styles over the years and combined them to something that doesn't always feel unique to me. It might be me to my followers. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely explain where all my inspirations and references are from, but it has become so Frankenstein at this point that I feel like I've developed this style. I don't want to call it uniquely my own. I'll say that it's something that has developed over the years, and it's something that I'm still developing. I'm definitely noticing different patterns or trends within my art that could be recognized as a style to the people that follow me. But I never want to put myself in a box and be like, you can never go outside this box that is called your style. And it's something that I try to make the box as big as I can so that people can tell it's still touched by my hand and I created it, but it doesn't have to be like black, white, heavy contrast, profile. Even with my Drawtober stuff I did this year, I really wanted to show my voice within mediums that I wasn't comfortable with. And yeah, that was a challenge and something I'm very aware of, but I agree with you. And that's all style really is you Frankenstein so many other styles that have influenced you in your life that you have created something uniquely your own. Let me grab. There we go. Yushin says, I believe I heard Ashley talking about the veggie candy analogy, but in context of cons. Yes. So I initially told the roommates last year about the candy and veggie analogy, and I think they interpreted it differently, and I think that's great. I think it's awesome when something like that idea can then get interpreted and then be used for other things in life. And that's how I initially heard the veggie and candy analogy. Zad says, I met so many people being so proud of their work, even when it wasn't drawn right. I think self-reflection is the most important thing. I hate when someone cries when you say constructive critiques, and they are happy. Oh, and thank you, Chunkiest Cat, for following. When ultra-hype positive comments come under their work. Yeah, I think this just goes back to being young or naive. It doesn't always have to be an age thing. I think a lot of artists that are naive don't understand the importance of constructive criticism. And more often than not, those are the artists that really won't have a technical merit behind their work. But I think it's good to not also put them down. I think it's very easy to talk bad about other artists that we feel are beneath us or that aren't, being the most capable of skill sets. And that's okay. I think it's okay to look at other people and what they're doing and be like, you know what? They're on their own path. They're going through their own struggles and their own journey. And I'm just glad to be a part of this, art journey alongside them, just in a different way or on a different path, I guess. But we have kind of the similar destinations. I think we all do. Eric says, any differences between failures of a professional or an amateur? Oh my gosh, yeah. And we're going to be talking about that in my fourth one, which is if you already have a career or somewhat of an establishment and how to create goals from there. Gut for the win, you bet. 300 feet next. Yeah, I mean, after this one, I'm hoping to do a 20-foot drawing. I mean, this is in the future, and I don't want to, something I just talked to you guys about, not hyping yourself up for something. So I'm not going to mention that. Pretend I didn't even say what I just said. Fem says, I think good also has many different meanings. For a beginner, something might be good even though there might be mistakes in it, while for someone that has been drawing professionally for years, it's not seen as good. I, for example, know that my art is not good if you see it next to a professional's work, but it is good for me because I know where it come from, and at this point in my journey, and I'm proud of it. That is beautiful. I think being proud of your work along the way is great, while also recognizing its flaws and what could be better, I think is amazing. And I want you to keep that up. All of us need to keep that up for our entire life if we really want to grow as an artist because you need to be positive about the work you're creating while still being objective. Larissa says, thank you for your response. Wrote down a bunch of reminders that were very helpful. Awesome. I mean, there's still more. I still got 3 more sections that I want to cover. So maybe I'll answer just a couple more questions and we'll continue then. John Miller. Hey, John, how are you doing? Says, yes, never stop learning, push your boundaries, fail forward. That is something that I hear a lot. Fail forward. And it's the idea of push through whatever you're working on or whatever you're doing and be okay with failing, because you're just going to get up, you're going to learn from it, and then you're going to continue on your path. And hopefully you won't fail again in that same manner, because you should have learned from it. So fail faster would be the next thing after that. Yeah, which Alt Mage said. You guys are on it today. Rat Bruiser says, is it bad that I haven't really thought about my goals for my art? I mean, I want to go to art school. I want to draw as much as I can, but it seems vague compared to what you seem to say here. Well, it's not like I gave it too much thought. I do this all the time where I only reflect like once a year. And I was just talking to Sean about this too, where I feel like in January, I kind of reflect on what I want to do for that year. And then it's just like, bam, I set my train to full steam ahead. I am running, or I am like just rolling really fast and really hard through any obstacles or goals that I had. And at the end of the year, I like stop at the station, I get off the train, and I think about, okay, what did I achieve this year? What did I want to achieve this year? What do I want to do for next year? And I feel like I should be doing this more than once a year, but for some reason, it's just the way that I guess I'm built. And I've learned to work with myself, but I think I might do this again in the summer, where I look at, okay, I'm 6 months into this year. Have I hit the goals? Have I met the goals that I've set for myself? And what can I do to hit them if I haven't yet? Thank you, Nerve CF, for following. So yeah, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, Rat Bruises. I just think you just haven't given a lot of thought. But I think giving yourself thought of like what you want to do with your art is good, because then you kind of have more of a direction, where as artists, oftentimes we feel directionless, or a lot of times we feel lost. And giving ourselves just a little bit of like a general direction to go, I think is good. But like I said, you don't want to be too specific, because then you can start to fail in ways that would actually do more damage. So I think it's good to have a general direction, but not be super specific. Heather Cruz says, what is the Discord name? You can find it below. There's a link to it. Okay, we're all caught up. Okay, so we're going to jump into the next section, because we only have an hour left, and I want to make sure we have as much time to talk about what we want to, or what I wrote down here before that time ends. So the next one are my suggestions that you don't have to add, but I think would be good to think about for you as not only an artist, but as a person. The first one is probably the most important, because we all struggle with this on some level, and some of us are much better at maintaining it than others. And I think it's something that is actually such a time killer and is just such a waste in general. And that is to stop complaining, stop making excuses, and stop gossiping. And those are 3 things that I am very aware of when I'm doing it and when other people are doing it. And it just feels like a waste of time. And even if it's coming out of my mouth, I hear this voice in my head being like, just stop. This is just such a waste of not only your time, but the people you're talking to. It's a waste of their time. So I'm going to reiterate those. Complaining, what does that mean? It's basically being like, oh, I can't do it today, or like, oh, I'm not good at art, or oh, my parents are, they always get in the way of me doing things. There's so many that I've heard over the years from doing conventions and people telling me why they can't be successful. And it's just like, that leads into my second one. You're just making excuses, and I don't want to hear it. No one wants to hear your excuses. Just do it. Just stop complaining. Just do it. And, man, when I taught at my college, that I was basically a teacher's aide for 2 semesters, I guess I could be more honest with them, because the teachers had to be careful that, people won't quit, because then the school will lose money, and that will reflect poorly on them as instructors. But for me, I was very honest. And there were some people that they would come and be like, oh, I didn't have a lot of time. And, I work a job that, I get home late, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I remember talking to this one kid specifically, and he kept listing all these reasons. And by the end of it, I was like, so you don't have it done. And he's like, well, no, didn't you just hear all the things that prevented me from doing it? And I was like, no, I just heard a lot of excuses, and I see that you haven't done anything that was assigned to you. And we got in this really interesting conversation, because then that led to me explaining about how he can manage his time better. And then from that first week on, he got his assignments done. But it took someone really kind of being like firm with them and being like, you are allowing yourself to be lazy. You're allowing these distractions to be excuses for why you cannot get other things done. Because it's like, I worked at a seafood restaurant and a librarian and at the library, and I worked at a retail shop, not at the same time, but the seafood restaurant I worked at a lot while I was at school. And I was going to school, I'd be working, and then I'd be drawing after I'd get home from work. And I did that for like 2 years. And I don't like hearing other people make excuses of why they can't, when it's like, you definitely can, you're just not allowing yourself to. Or because of the way that especially social media is built nowadays, we're so comfortable wasting time, like being on Instagram for an hour and waking up to it, going to bed with it, that it's weird working and like doing actual labor, because there's no reward that is prompt, that is quick. And the reward comes when you finish and you put hard work in and then you post it. But too often I feel like that isn't taught anymore. It's like this instant gratification, and we need to get out of that. You need to like pull yourself out of it when you're doing it to yourself. And I think then I could rant about this for an hour, so I'm gonna pull back here and go back to talking to this kid that the remaining, I think it was 9 weeks, he got his assignments done and on time. And I think part of it was fear that I would yell at him again, which maybe a little fear is good, but he really kind of improved. And not only did he improve in that class, but then he would tell me it was like week 8, he told me how in his other classes he was kind of improving too. And it's because when you stop making excuses and letting that kind of run your life, you kind of see how much time you do have and how much time you're willing to waste or how much time you're willing to create rather than waste. And you can get so much done if you really put your mind to it. Okay. The next one is start saying I can. Sounds simple, right? But you would be surprised by how many people that are artists specifically will say I can't, or I'm not good enough, or I'm busy, or I have too much going on. And you start to list all these things, and they're negative. What are they called? Basically, you're building up this idea in your head that you cannot, and if you say it enough times, you start to believe it. And I want to reverse that. And I think because I've always been so bullheaded, I've always believed in myself. So me being like, I can do it was actually very easy. I feel like I slipped into that mindset without even really trying. But there's a lot of artists, and it wasn't even until like my late college, why thank you for following, that I realized a lot of these artists had these very negative opinions of themselves. And it was disheartening because their art was so good, but they thought that they weren't good enough because of the way they looked or because they couldn't socially interact. And it was a shame because their art spoke volumes of their confidence, but they didn't exude it in their own personal life. So I want to challenge you guys to stop saying anything that would reinforce a negative affirmation about yourself. And that could be something like, I'm not good enough, or even if it's not related to art, like I'm not good looking enough to be in a relationship. It's like, no, not true. I'm sure a lot of us know relationships where one person you would consider not as attractive to someone that's very attractive, but it's because usually, more often than not, that person's very confident, or they're very funny, or they're very just genuinely happy. And those are attributes that people are more attracted to in the long run. But you know what people aren't attracted to? Negativity, things that bring them down, things that bring their mood just down in general. So start saying I can, especially to the people around you, your family and friends, and especially your art friends, because those are the ones you'll probably be critiquing the most or getting constructive feedback from. And if they give you a feedback and be like, oh, I can't do that because I'm just not, used to working with this pencil, or whatever the excuse is, stop that. Be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to go look on YouTube to understand how to work with this pencil because I'm not super familiar with it, but I'm going to put myself in a position where I can learn how to use it. Right there. You already kind of changed the mindset, and that will help you produce better work. And I know this sounds super like hippie and new age and whatever, but it's so true. And I don't care how lame it sounds, because I've seen it not only work for myself, but a lot of my art friends and a lot of my friends outside of art. When you start changing your verbiage of being more positive than negative, it'll lead to not only a happier life, but in whatever work you're doing, a more prolific portfolio as well. All right. The next one is something that sounds very culty, but I've seen this so often on like success quotes, and it's the ones that say, do more, think less. And that's not to mean that you shouldn't be thinking about, important questions in your life, or thinking about, your family or things that are important to you. Not that, like, that's not at all what this means. It's basically saying, stop thinking about what you're going to do and like write down all these lists of what you're going to do and talk to other people about these big ideas and projects that you're going to do, or why you're not good enough, or think about why the girl that you really like won't, text you back. Like, there are so many things that are just a waste of time. And instead of thinking about them, especially things that we can't change, do more. And this goes back to, what's that saying of like, accept the things you can change, or no, change the things that you can and accept the things that you cannot. And it's the idea that if there are things in your life that you just can't change at the moment, especially with other people, you can't change other people. You can't force someone to do something you want them to do. Or if you do, that's kind of a crappy start to a relationship or even a friendship or any kind of companionship. I think especially with art, too often we're thinking about it, especially when we have like a notepad in front of us. It's like we're looking at this blank white paper and we just don't know what to do. We don't know what to draw. We don't know what to create. But you know what helps? Actually starting to draw. And it may not be this preconceived, giant, elaborate, beautiful illustration that we had in mind if we would have sat for 17 hours and thought about it. But you know what? It'll get our hand moving. It'll get us warmed up. And maybe creating that small little doodle for your warm-up will create and generate new ideas that will become these bigger illustrations. But if you never put pencil to paper in the first place, those ideas would have never came to your head. So do more, think less. The next one is reinforcing what I've been talking about a lot, is your gut intuition is right. You would think that's obvious, but it's not. And there are so many times in my life where I've trusted my gut and it's worked out. And there's been a couple of times in my life where it didn't work out, but I learned so much from that failing that actually I look at it as a success, because then it pushed me in a different direction. So always follow your gut. And stop letting other people influence so much of what you create or what you do, because it's if you let too many other people influence on what you're doing, then it might as well be their work, because it is no longer your own. You may have been the one that created it, but it's other people's voice. And you're just basically like a speakerphone that is kind of getting their voice and then shooting it out through speakers. But that's not your voice. But I mean, that one, I guess, is something you'll learn over time. And there'll be instances where you'll trust your gut, because it's not always going to be there. There'll just be times where it comes up and you have this gut feeling about it. And then if you listen to it, it's like, more often than not, you'll feel so relieved. But then when you don't listen to that gut instinct, it will just sit in you like a pit, and it will bother you. Unless if you can fix it, if it's like something that, even there's actually a very specific scenario for me. I did this Christina illustration, which is this giant piece with a girl laying on top of water. It's one of my swordplay characters. And initially I had like 100 of these petals that were around her, and they were all yellow, and it was supposed to represent, hope that was lost because they were plucked or they fell from the rose bush, and the idea that yellow represents hope for me. And then to have her be surrounded by this pool of dead hope, I thought would be a really cool illustration, a cool meaning for me. But I had so many people tell me they didn't like how many petals there were. So then I changed it. And now there's only like 13 or 20 petals in the scene. And it's more minimal. And yeah, at the time I was like, yeah, this was a better idea, blah, blah. But now looking at it, I was like, nope. I like my idea for it. And it still bothers me to this day. I will edit it before I actually put the final Christina in her chapter, so I will have the hundreds of petals back into the illustration. But yeah, it was something where I didn't trust my gut, and it bothers me. So stop putting yourself in scenarios where things will bother you. Okay, the next one goes into what we're talking about. So kind of going back into the stop complaining, excuses, and gossip. This one's stop talking about other people. Wow, is that something that I have noticed? My aunt told me the story. Basically, then it led to the end of it was basically there are 3 things that people like to talk about. And they're kind of on like levels. The very lowest level, the cheapest, the one that I'll go through it. But the first one is talking about other people. That is literally the lowest form of communication. The second one are events, and that could include like watching a movie and discussing the film events, or going on a trip and talking about who you met or what you saw. So that would be events. And then the high tier would be things that are more existential, things that don't have answers, and discussing things that will spark debate or discussion or conversation. And they could be hot topics where they could be about like women's rights or things like abortion, things that will have more to talk about, and you can learn a lot from those discussions because you're hearing other people's opinions that have different lens and different perspectives on life that is different than your own, and hearing their perspective can hopefully influence yours to change. So my aunt basically had this whole thing of like, if you ever hear people that only talk about other people, they're literally talking about nothing that will actually help you in life. If anything, it'll just be gossip, which is one of the things I really do not think is worth talking about. So try to avoid talking about people. Events and things like traveling and movies, I do think that is important because that can broaden your visual library. You can, get ideas. Like that's a great place to be in. I think that's the one that we should be in most of the time. And the third one, talking about higher thinking or existentialism or what is life, or like what is the purpose, things like that, I think are good because then they spark and create new ways of thinking. Well, if you have the right people to talk with, or even if it's just yourself, having these conversations within are good. But when the only thing you're thinking about, and especially when you have that inner monologue with ourselves, and we all know what I'm talking about, is just about other people, that's a problem. And it's something that I recognized, it was like 2 or 3 years ago, that that's all I was thinking about. Well, even like while I was drawing, I was thinking about these other artists and what they're doing and how I can do it better, or what I thought they were doing wrong, or how they're influencing younger generations that I don't think they're influencing them right. And it was way too focused on other people. When you start to reel it in and you start to recognize when other people are talking about other people, it becomes very clear of like, I want to get out of this conversation. I don't want to have this conversation with you. What is breaking down this person doing for us? And do we feel better because of it? I rarely feel better about talking bad about someone. And yeah, there's usually a venting period where when you get like really heated, I do think it's good to let it out, but you need to let it out in a healthy manner, because too often that's where like horrible arguments and friendships break down because there's a lack of communication. And oftentimes when we're talking bad about someone, it's usually someone that we actually love and care for, and we're not talking directly to them about our issue with them. We're talking to others. And this is something I want to say, like, I was 25. When I was 25, I started telling people exactly what I had a problem with them, if there was ever a problem with our communication or our relationship, or if they had something that was an issue with me. I wanted to know, and I brought it up like right away. I hate letting things linger, and I hate having grudges because I'm not good at it. I'm really not good at it, because then that's all I'm thinking about. So I need to get it out on the table right away. And it's something that has helped me so much now I'm 29. In the last 4 years, that has been like my saving grace. And to always be honest, even when it hurts. And that doesn't mean like you are sassy or I think too often people use like being honest as a way to like knock people down, or be like, oh, your hair is looking really whack, I'm just being honest. Like you just want to be an a-hole, if I'm going to be blatant with you. Instead, I think just supporting your friends, even when you may not agree with it, is important. Unless if it's like a big morality thing, then you could step in and talk to your friend about it. But I guess, sorry, when I get into these rants, I want to like pull it in because I'm like, okay, focus on the topic, stay on subject. But I guess it's just me giving advice to you guys to stop talking about other people, especially other artists. Talking about how this artist is doing something better or something worse. Usually it's worse. I feel like we always break each other down of like, oh, they only draw pretty girls and that's why they're horrible, or oh, they've been stuck in the same style, or they've only been drawing simple things ever since they got popular. It's like, stop breaking them down. They have their own lives. They have their own things that they're going through. Maybe their mom just died and this year has been a really rough one for them, so they haven't really put out anything that is considered great or deemed great in your eyes because you don't know the whole story. So that's something that I've been really good about, of not just breaking down another artist or not feeling super competitive with them because you don't know what they're going through. The best thing that you can do is support them. And if an artist that inspires you and maybe they're having like an off month or even an off year, just probably understand that they're going through something that you just aren't aware of. Okay. And the last one I have on my suggestions, and I know that these are very weird goals, but I feel like having a healthier lifestyle creates better art. And I think that's why a lot of my topics or a lot of these streams oftentimes go to that place, because more often than not, a lot of the young artists just aren't confident with themselves and they have a lot of self-doubt. But when they start to break that down, that's when they start to create better art and they're able to create things that are more creative or more technically impressive because they don't have those mental roadblocks anymore. So my last one is take responsibility, especially when you're in the wrong. That was a good lesson that I'm sure we all learn and we continue to learn throughout life, and accept when you are wrong. And not only when like simple things of like, oh, I thought, I think this actress is in the movie. And then your friend's like, no, I'm pretty sure it's this actress. And then you look it up and they were right. I mean, it's not like that. Like that's a very simple one. I'm talking about really taking responsible for things like, why aren't you successful? And I know that's really hard for some of us to hear, but if I asked every person that is an artist or wants to be an artist of why are you not successful, a lot of them would start listing excuses or reasons. They would start blaming. They put the blame on other people. It's really hard for us to put blame on ourselves, especially when it's something that's so close to us. Why, thank you for following. Or something as personal as our art. And I can tell you with my own craft and my own career that I've been very lucky. And I think it's very foolish if I were to ever think that I've gotten to where I am now on my own. I've gotten to where I am now because one of CG Cookie, because of my parents of never deterring me from any other direction than doing art. From the friends that I had in college, especially Nubia, she really pushed me to be better. And then going into CG Cookie with these bosses that were very critical of me, but very constructive. And then being shared by people and being seen at the right time. And especially my roommates, all of them that I've had, even the ones in the beginning to the ones that I've had now, I've learned from all of them in some way or another. And I like to think that you don't have to just think about why you aren't successful, but you also have to think about why you are successful. And in those cases, I think it's good to give other people recognition. But when it's talking about things of like why you aren't successful or why you don't do things or when it's something more negative, I think we need to start taking ownership and be like, you know what? I am the reason that I haven't been, like, let's say your goal is to lose weight this year, for whatever reason it is. And if you start blaming other people or the food or the trainer that you got isn't pushing you hard enough, it's like, stop putting blame on other people and start bringing it in. And it's tough because we don't like to admit faults. And I'm one of those people. It's like, especially being so bullheaded and being firm with other people, it's like I need to also be that way with myself. So yeah, something to think about is taking responsibility. Okay, so I'm going to just go through the next two sections. That way we'll have like a Q&A at the end type deal. And that way I can at least get all this out on paper. And I'm reading all the comments really quick, but thank you so much. I think this is a good conversation to have to start off the new year and maybe get us all thinking about things that we want to do for this year. And especially on not even the art side, but on the mental side, it's like not only being kind to others, being kind to ourselves, but also being very firm with ourselves and making sure that not only are we staying on task with our art goals, but being on task with being kind to other people and not just bringing them down. Because it's very easy to fall into that category of like us versus them mentality, which I think isn't a good mentality to have. Okay, moving on. These are for the artists that may have already a career established. Maybe you are over, let's say, like 10K followers on Instagram, or you've hit a lot of success at conventions, or maybe on Twitch, you just get so many watchers, or YouTube, you just get a bunch of likes and comments, blah, whatever it might be. Even if you have a smaller success, whatever that is, it's relative to everyone. But if you believe you already have yourself established on some level, then this is for you. The first tip is a quote from Bill Gates, and it's to stay humble because success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. And I firmly believe this because I see a lot of artists when they become successful or they get a lot of recognition, I feel like their pieces start to just slide down like on a very, very slow steeping hill. It's like, it's not like a dramatic change, but often it just never gets better. It just seems to be like they got comfortable, they made a lot of money, they got a lot of recognition, and they coast on something that may have been really cool and inspiring to them 3 years ago, but present day, they're still doing the same thing. To me, it's like they're relying on that coasting rather than relying on pushing themselves or challenging themselves. So I always do my best to have something that is bigger or something that is challenging or something that I'm not comfortable with, because that will help me grow and learn as an artist. And there are times where I do fall into just checking in for the day or clocking in for the day, as we call it, and just going on autopilot. And if you ever see me draw like a girl with horns in like profile, it's because I wasn't really inspired that day. I'm going to be honest. And I think there's a lot of artists out there that I wish would be more constructive on themselves. But then I go back into thinking, well, stop focusing on other artists, because that's what I was just talking about, where I would focus too much on them. And instead, I'm going to be turning it toward myself, putting a mirror in front of myself essentially, and being like, are you doing enough? Stop caring if other people are doing enough. Are you doing enough? Because that's all that matters. And if the answer is yes, then I can go about my day. If the answer is no, that's where I feel like I tend to then turn the focus on other people. It's when I'm not comfortable or confident with what I'm doing, that's when I start to focus on other people. And I've recognized that, especially this past year. And I've become so much better at being like, you know what? No, it's because I'm not happy with the work I'm creating. It's not because that person is doing anything wrong. They are hustling. They are doing whatever they need to. I'm going to focus on me. Okay. The next one is what I'm doing part of a larger project? It doesn't necessarily have to be. It doesn't have to be like this illustrated novel or something like that. But what if it's like an art book? It could be just a bunch of random, not connected drawings, but to have a goal in mind of like, okay, eventually I want to have a Kickstarter and I want to have at least a 50-page book. It doesn't have to have any subject matter that is related to one another, but just having a book in general so that I can sell it and I can be more financially stable. And I think a book is always a good project in the long run, because even if you're not a comic book artist and an illustrated novelist, I think it's good to have a collection of your work to work towards, because then that goal kind of pushes you. It motivates you to continue creating work to be included in this book. The next one is, and I'm going to kind of say this to you guys, is this challenging you? Like actually challenging. And I had to put that part in parentheses, because oftentimes we like to say we're challenging ourselves when we are definitely not challenging ourselves. And I think it's just because that's what we hear the great arts legends that I look up to, and they're always like, you know, you got to challenge yourself. And I always still, you know, blah, 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 blah. And it's like rhetoric that we're just repeating because we feel like that's what we're supposed to say. But I think it's good to actually look at what you're creating and be like, is this actually challenging me? Or am I just saying it because I want the praise and feedback of like, oh yeah, he's challenging himself. Like what a great artist. He's not just slipping into his comfort zone. You know, like that's something that it's very easy for other artists like myself to see through. And actually not even just artists. I feel like even my mom, when I did this piece and immediately when I showed it to her, I was so proud. She like critiqued it like immediately. She's like, well, that hand position and the swipe on the window doesn't make sense. Like that was the first thing she said. And it was like, wow, I thought I was challenging myself, but clearly on that part of the painting, I was just kind of going on autopilot. So then it kind of made me reflect on what I was doing. But yes, I think it's good to actually look at what you're doing and being like, is this actually challenging me? And not just, am I saying it just to say it? All right, the next one is this honest? Is the work you're creating authentic? And is your voice, and kind of the subshoot of that is your voice being heard? And it's kind of going back to what we said earlier about, borrowing from other people's voice and then calling it your own. And too often we see like style mimics. And I see it a lot at cons with like Loesch. I love Loesch, but I go to cons, there's a lot of Loesch clones, as they're called. Or even with like Pete Moorbacher with his Angelarium series, you see a lot of Pete Moorbacher clones at cons. It's because a lot of people see that they're doing well. They're perceived as successful, whether it be financial or socially. Well, thank you for following, by the way, everyone. And we want that same level of success, that same perception. But too often, it doesn't look like you're making your own path. It's like literally you saw that someone else carved this path out and it seems to be working. You're like, I'm just going to mosey on down that path because it seems to already be working. So does that work? Yeah, you might get some financial backing, but no, in the long run, no. It looks inauthentic. It feels inauthentic, especially to people that are in the art world, and your accreditation will never be there because you're stealing someone else's voice. And what does that mean? Like, what does that mean when I say, is your voice being heard? And I won't do too much of a sub-shoot on that one, but essentially is the work you're creating authentic to what you want to say? And it doesn't have to be like this big, piece on social commentary or, it doesn't have to be anything like that. But when you're drawing, does it feel natural? Does it feel like you're having fun? Does it feel like it's speaking to the things that you're interested in and you're combining all of them in a way that is uniquely you? Like, to me, that is your voice. And I feel like oftentimes it gets lost for artists when you try to be something that you're not, and that usually is financially driven. And it sucks that is a thing for artists because we want all of our art to feel authentic and to feel like it's us. But there are times when, if you're in a money pinch situation, you create work not because you feel driven in an authentic way, but it's because you're driven in like a financial way. But ironically, sometimes that can create the most authentic pieces because you're so motivated that sometimes when you're working, you're really pushing yourself and like pouring yourself into this drawing, not because you were interested, let's say it was a commission or a freelance project, not so much that you're interested in their reasoning for the subject matter or what it is, but because of how much you love and you're passionate about drawing, that when you're creating, it can just pour into it, especially if you're feeling stress or you're really sad. Sometimes you feel it. You look at a painting or an illustration and you feel what that artist was feeling. So that's what I mean by, is your voice being heard? The next one is, what is the message I'm spreading? Is there significance or impact? Like I said, this doesn't have to be like a social commentary every single painting you do, but the meaning is like, what is the message I'm spreading? I think that's a better underlying message. There are some artists that I used to follow that you could just kind of tell in their descriptions or in the stories they were sharing, they kind of had this negative view of the world, and it kind of reflected in their art. And after a while, I would look at their stuff and it would kind of bring me down. And I was recognizing that their art, it definitely did have a message and they definitely had a voice, but it was one that was destructive and one that I don't think was worth looking at. And it's not that I need to then, call that artist out or do anything. Literally, unfollow. And I think that's kind of the beauty about social media or things nowadays. There's so much bad about social media, but I think the one good thing is, if something is really driving you down, click the unfollow button. you don't have to be following them. You don't have to be in tune with everything that they are doing or saying. And I did that a lot. There was a lot of people I didn't want to hear from, and I unfollowed them or I muted them. And now it's like when I go to my feed, I'm excited. And admittedly, I've been following a lot of things that aren't even art recently. It's like inspiring clips. It's not like those motivating poster ones. It's like the last one I watched was this boy was opening a present on Christmas, and on the bottom it was a photo of the family that he was around. And then there was a card that read, "This was our family photo this year. Next year, we would like you to be in our family photo." And then he flipped it over and it said, "Because we would like to adopt you if you are comfortable with that." And the little boy started crying, and it was just like a beautiful moment. And I was literally watching this while I was going to the bathroom. And it just brightened my day. I enjoyed watching that. And I think that's the power of social media when it can be used for good. So I've been finding myself following a lot of things that aren't art related, that are just like reinstilling my belief that people are good at heart. And that has been, I think, probably helping to my being overly happy all the time, is because I am surrounding myself with things that contribute to not only working hard, but also loving hard. I know that sounds really cheesy, but it's true. And when you surround yourself with a bunch of negative things, it will rub off on you, and you will in turn become a little negative. So when you're following a bunch of artists that maybe their message isn't in line with what you want to say, then just unfollow them or mute them, you know? Okay. Next one, and the last one, is find artists that are better than you. If you think there are none, you have a problem. I definitely can recognize where I'm at in terms of like who I'm looking up to and why they're better than me and why I need to continue pushing myself. Because if you really do not have people that you look up to or that you think are better in the skill or craft that you're doing, you are not going to improve, one, but two, you're also very egotistical. And guess what? That's going to come across in your work. Because if you don't think you have any room for improvement, or you think you're at the top of your game, there's people that I put this on here because there's artists that I've met where they really do think they are like the best at what they do. And I'm looking at their art being like, sure, I can clearly see where this could be improved upon, but since you already made it up in your mind that you are the best, I'm gonna walk away and let you think that, because this is not worth my time. And your art clearly reflects someone that is very much full of themselves, when your voice is very loud and it's something that I don't want to hear. So I'm going to mute you. I'm going to walk away. So find artists that are better than you. For me, a good example would be like Alan Williams, my art hero. If you don't know him, I think he's a living graphite legend. And then you have like Jeremy Bastian, same thing, but with a micron pen. Actually, it's a brush that he uses. Or Tran Nguyen, or I don't know how to pronounce that last name, sorry. Or even, who was the artist I was just looking at? Or actually, you know who I've been looking to recently? And this is going to be my stream next week. It's the top 9 artists that influenced me in 2018. A lot of them are dead. And I am recognizing more and more how there are so many artists that lived back in the day that I wasn't even aware of, that were so good, that those are the people I want to start comparing myself to, or like working towards, because their work in my mind is phenomenal. And because they had a whole lifetime to create them, oftentimes you see not only the beginning stages of their art, but you see the middle, which is usually when they create the most, and then the end of their life, where they either get really experimental or they really create these profound things. And those are the artists that I want to start comparing myself to and pushing myself to be seen like them by future generations to come. And that's why I want to start doing these bigger illustrations and, you know, pushing myself to do things that I'm not comfortable doing, because I don't want to just fall into the comfortable trap. And then you just create pieces that seem monotonous and uninspired. And I don't want to be that. I want to be very aware of where I'm at in my art career, and to always be challenging myself in the same way that I'm now challenging you guys to look at yourself and your art career. And are you challenging yourself? Are you just relying on your current skill level and you're just autopiloting new pieces for financial gain? And where there are times in your life where I think that is necessary when you're trying to become financially independent, things like that. But when you have become financially independent, and that's why this is on my, if you already have a career established, if you already are independently or financially independent, I challenge you to push yourself to create pieces that are beyond your comfort zone. And I'm not going to say much more than that because I don't want to tell people what they should do, but it's just a suggestion and more of a challenge from me. Okay, so we're at the last part of the discussion, and then I'll open up a Q&A for a little bit. And the last part is I'm going to ramble through these really quick, and it's the goals that I have for myself. So the first one, and these are all very vague, and you'll see, or most of them are pretty vague, and because what I talked about of how to actually set goals, they shouldn't be super specific because life is flexible. The first one is to push myself artistically, and basically I want to continue to challenge myself. The second one is to work on my little epic, and it could just be a little bit at a time, but I want to continually be working on it and have something that I'm always kind of having on the back burner. I always allude to that. I always have pieces on the back burner. I always want that one to be on the back burner for me. Third one is to create more business relationships. I would love to do more with Strathmore or the pencils that I work with. I want to get sponsored. I wanted to work with Imagine FX, which actually kind of turned out to happen before this year even started. But to create more business relationships and have, things that I'm actually interested in to be working with. Fourth one is to create the next swordplay chapter. This one's a little more specific, but I'm not giving myself like a set, by the end of January I need this, by the end of February I need this. And that's what I was trying to do with my Patreon last year. But how I'm going to redo my Patreon this year is to be less specific and more of like, I'm going to be sharing everything I'm doing. I'm going to be more focused on working at home, but it's going to be less specific because then if I don't hit that goal, it just weighs on me so heavy. And that's not healthy for me or the people that are following me on Patreon. So I'm going to change that. The fifth one is have more importance in the community. And I want to be more active on Discord, which I've been actively been doing since November. And it's been really showing in the way that people are responding. My mods are amazing. We have a few of them in the chat. They are great. And I definitely think it's a community that we are growing to be something. Thank you for following. Of artists that are genuinely wanting to improve their skills and just want other artists to relate and talk with. The next one is to have a Kickstarter. I'm having my next one in April, and that is another specific one, but it's something that needs to get done. And it's going to be my third sketchbook, so I already kind of know what I need to do. I just need to actually do it. And for those of you who may be interested, I'm going to be doing that for my Patreon. I'm going to record the entire process of creating a book, from collecting all the drawings, to scanning, to editing them in Photoshop, to make them fit the file and everything, to what the files should be, what is the bleed that is most common with book manufacturers, how the cover is on a different Photoshop file, how to get them printed, where to get that made, what are the different options you can have. So that's something I'm planning to do with my Patreon, and that's something that I need to start planning with my Kickstarter because April is going to be coming fast. The next one was creating work that I'm proud of. You would think that this would come without any work or without any second guessing. It should be like second nature that, yeah, I'm proud of the work I'm doing. But I don't know if it's just because I'm so hyper aware now of the work that I'm doing, but it's very easy for me to look at what I'm doing and be like, am I proud of this or am I just doing this to clock in? And if I'm doing it to clock in, that's fine every now and then because I'm not going to be inspired every single day. And maybe I just really need to draw that day to continue, pushing that habit of drawing every day. But there will be times where I'm not super proud of it. So I want to create work that I am proud of and to have, even if I have some duds along the year, I have ones that I'm also very proud of. And the next one is to have a better run Drawtober. So this October, we're going to be doing the same thing we did the last 2 years, but instead of 31 days of drawing prompts, we're going to have essentially 4 or 5. And I'm going to be focusing more on making more merch. I want a lot of pins. I want sweaters. I want to have like fun things because I love Halloween. But I feel like I wasn't able to really dive in the deep end with that because I was so caught up with conventions. And I went to New York and there were 2 weddings in October. There was just a lot. And then at the end of October, there were 2 cons. There was just a lot. And running that was very stressful. And I feel like it actually wasn't healthy for me. So I'm learning what to do this year with it, and I'm going to change it a bit. And my very last one, and the last thing that I want to end my notes on, is to keep my relationships strong. And that doesn't necessarily, I think for a lot of people when they hear relationship, they just think of like their partner, who they're dating, but that is also their family, their parents, your closest friends, the people in your life that have helped you get to where you are now, or that you always have a good connection with, or that you always have like a positive sharing of like positive vibes back and forth, that want people that you just, connect with. Focus on those and make sure that those are of importance to you in your life. And I always say I've learned, or I'm learning, because I really do believe that life isn't something where you get to a point and then you can just teach others. I, like many of you, learn things every year, and there are some things that I feel like are more important than others. And even with like art, I could go on and on about things that I think have worked in my art career and things that haven't. But things that I've definitely noticed more than anything is when I'm more healthy in my mindset, and it doesn't mean I'm happy all the time. Even when I was really sad, I still got a lot of work done, because regardless of how I was feeling, whether I was upset or sad or happy, whatever it was, I still loved who I was as a person. And I think that allowed me to always create, because I never let myself down. A lot of people can let you down. A lot of other people, even people that shouldn't be the ones letting you down, especially if they're family members, they can let you down, but only you have the power to let yourself down. And that's something that I've never really had to experience that much, because I care about myself too much to see myself crumble. And there were times where, yeah, it was really tough, but my way of getting through those tough times wasn't to complain, wasn't to make excuses, but it was really just working. And a lot of times, yeah, I was like crying every night. It was sad. I went through a dark period like 24, 25, or like 23. 23 was kind of rough for me. But those were the times where I was really pushing myself, because I was not going to let my circumstances affect my success in my career moving forward, because then those horrible circumstances won, and I wasn't willing to give them that power over me. Only you have that, power over you. Okay. So those were all my notes for the new year. Or not, I shouldn't say for the new year. Those were all my notes for how to set goals for yourself artistically. And you can see how it very much led into how to set goals for yourself almost personally, which then leads to more artistic goals. And I think that is very important. So I guess for the last, let's see, we got like 13 minutes here. I'm going to open up a Q&A. So if you want to ask your questions now, I'm going to be looking at this chat. I'll be scrolling, but I'll also be scrolling to the bottom. Please put @Vonnart before your comment or question, and we'll do my best, or I will do my best to answer them in the best manner possible in the last 13 minutes here. Okay. Spectre, hey chat, Happy New Year and all, and Tim. Well, hello. Actually, wait. Oh, never mind. We're good. Fem says, I actually think that sometimes we look too far for our goals. My goal is to actually be genuinely happy with myself. I noticed that last year I was not, and my sub goals are all related to becoming happy in my own skin. Going out more, doing things I love, contacting friends more, and learning something that I wanted to since I was a child, and of course starting to believe in myself and being proud of stuff by placing it in perspective. Yeah, it's so funny how when we truly take care of ourselves, the things that we care about, like not only our relationships or like things that are very obvious, but then things like our career can really benefit from it too, because you have such a love for who you've become, and you're comfortable being in your own skin, that when you create art, all of a sudden that art, then people can feel it. When you are confident in yourself and you are very comfortable with and love who you are, when you're creating work, it shows. And it's very hard to explain, but it's very easy to feel when you look at someone's art and you can just tell, And there's a lot of artists that I follow that they may not be the technically most sound because they're younger, but they are so confident in the way that they are doing their pencil strokes and the way that they're doing their color bold choices, that it speaks volumes over their technical slips, which they'll learn and grow from over the years. Hey, Bugles from Australia. All right, Jim says, I found every time I'm into something artistically, it gets stolen or pop culture jumps on it. I used to draw. Why, thank you for following. I used to draw mile-high buildings and cities. In Star Wars, Corus. Oh, I feel like I should know this, but I don't know Star Wars cities. Coruscant was made in the special editions. Whew, wait, I need like. Let me take a drink really quick. All right, let's see if I can talk better. And rendering them lost its luster. Then I discovered in a random shoot-off in 2011, Cthulhu and Lovecraft, there were maybe 20 art pieces in a Google search about it. Now look at Google, lol. Now I have nothing left, and I worry some things are passing me by, or what I find has already been done to death. What does one do? So this goes back into who taught me this? This was kind of in college when it was Kent, my old CG Cookie coworker. And he would say, essentially it's like strike when the iron is hot. That means when you have a good idea, and usually these are people that have like a good intuition where they can see some things trending and they're like, oh, like I keep seeing this popped up and I have an idea that this is kind of shooting at. You better draw that and you create it first, because I do believe in a cultural mindset where it was like I noticed, what was it? It was before Beyonce created Lemonade. I had this fascination with bees, and I was becoming into this whole idea of like drawing a queen bee, and it was a big thing for me. And then all of a sudden, this illustration of Beyonce with like a queen bee, and it was royal and regal. And I was like, darn it, that's what I wanted to do. And I think it was because I saw a lot of bee things on my Instagram. I saw even at conventions, a lot of people had like a bee bracelet or a bee tattoo. And I would just like pick up on it. So when your intuition is like knocking on your door, it's up to you to answer it. And if you don't answer it in time, that intuition will go to someone else's door because someone else will open it. And then you'll be like, well, what the heck? Like, it was at my door first. But it's like, yeah, but you didn't open the door. And that's how I kind of always relate that to. So I feel you. There have been times where I feel like I had this really good idea, but then someone else jumped on it. And even though I would have done it differently, it's like, well, they did it first. And I can still do it, but I feel like I've lost some of my excitement for it. And a lot of things like what you're saying, the like Cthulhu, when we're working off of subject matter, you got to be careful because since it's not technically your own, you could have the possibility of a lot of fan art or a lot of other people having offshoots that may be better than yours. And I guess the thing with the Star Wars city, it's like, that is unfortunate, but stuff like that will happen all the time. And you just have to trust that your intuition will guide you and find new things for you to draw. You just have to strike when the iron's hot, or else it'll get stolen, or someone else will think about it too. Let's see here. Fanabalistic says, I was thinking of choosing a topic for each month, like environments, and then do different types of studies during that month to create a finished piece at the end of the month. What do you think about that? I think that's good. It's giving yourself enough time to create one of these every month. Just know, like kind of like what I talked about earlier, like keep it flexible. So if like you get way more interested in characters, it's okay to change from environments to characters. Or I guess if you have a topic each month. Yeah, no, actually, I think that's a great idea. I think it's vague enough where you're able to change it. And I think it is still giving yourself a goal to work towards. And I think that is great. So yeah, I think that's a good goal to do. And I would love to see it. So I don't know if you'd want to be interested in posting in the Discord, but I would like to see what your topic is that month and then your execution on it. ZA, this one is a great stream. Well, thank you. I will be uploading this one to YouTube if anyone missed the beginning. Luva says, hey everyone, couldn't come earlier, but at least I can watch the last half an hour. Well, welcome, Luva. Ella says, also defining what success is for yourself. Very true. Too often we look at what other artists are doing and think that their idea of success is going to be our idea of success. And yeah, you can borrow from it and yeah, you can get inspired from it. But you really have to understand that your definition of success should be completely your own. And like for me, it is definitely financial stability because I have a house, I have roommates, I want to be not worried about financial things because that can be very stressful. So I want to be put in a position where I'm financially independent. And then the second one is to create work that is, I'm proud of and things that are pushing myself. So success for me isn't just about being successful on the business side, but also in life. So like having relationships that I feel connected with and I feel empower me, like that to me is success as well. Eric says, someone being brutally honest only works if you apply it to yourself. Yes, because I usually have to feel out with students if they can handle a heavier critique. And there are times where I can just kind of tell either they're not in the right emotional state to hear constructive feedback, or especially firm feedback that I tend to give, or if they are just a little pompous and they can't even see because their head is up their own, I have to kind of read the situation first before I give heavy critique. And I agree with you. You can only be brutally honest with other people when you start being brutally honest with yourself. Fire says, I played Warframe, Oh, I played other games, but my free time can be wasted here. I'm not an English native speaker, so it's hard for me to draw and understand Tim at the same time. Try deleting if you're wasting too much time here. I feel like there was a previous question to that, but I'm not sure what that conversation was. Maybe I'll find it. Dirtle Turtle says, how about setting a goal for a certain number of finished pieces or studies over the year? I kind of have a Weird Al work schedule, so I can't dedicate a certain amount of time to art each day. So I set myself a minimum as a goal, but I gave myself a certain freedom with the time I dedicate each day to not stress myself out. I think it's good, but I think when you put a number on it, I think that's where if it works for you, that's great. But I would personally recommend being more flexible. So instead of like finishing a certain, like if you put like, I need to put 12 finished pieces by the end of the year, instead be like, see, this is where it gets tough because you need to keep it flexible, but you also need to be kind of firm with yourself. So like you also said studies over the year. So maybe be like each month, kind of like what the other artist was doing, where each month they had a different topic or focus. Yours would be like, okay, this month I really want to work on anatomy, and I'll work on that throughout the month, and then next month I'll do this, and then that, and then that. But this one's tough for me because I don't like having specific numbers, because then if you say 12, well then let's say you finish 12 pieces by July. Does that mean August through December you kind of slack off because you feel like you hit your number? Instead of, this one's, I'll let you answer this for yourself, because to me, I could give you what I would do, but I feel like that works for me. I don't know if that necessarily work for you. So I would say as long as you're cutting out time for yourself, even if it can't be every day, to draw, that should be the first goal. And if you happen to create 12 pieces, if you happen to create 24 pieces, to me, it's less important than if you're actually working during that set period of time that you've set out for yourself when you can. That would be, to me, more important. And then also just challenging yourself. So instead of having, like for me, this one piece is more challenging than anything I've probably ever done before. But if I said that goal to someone random, like, oh, my goal this year is to complete one piece, I mean, yeah, that would sound really lame, but there's context and there's things that people don't know. So like, I don't even know if your 12 pieces, are they small? Are they big? So instead, I would just keep pushing you to work during those hours you set aside and to challenge yourself, even if it's just a little bit on each of those pieces. And if you really do work well with having like a set number, then with each piece, try to do something or improve upon the next piece that you thought could have been improved on the previous one. That would be my best advice. Sorry, I feel like I had to talk myself into that answer. Because sometimes I'm battling in my mind of like, what's the best advice here to give? The next one is from, I'll do 3 more here. Fem says, something that could help not wasting time when you take a paper but don't know what to draw is to keep a notebook or other random papers, and every time, no matter the time or place, when you have an idea, you doodle or write it down really quick. afterwards, when you sit down to draw something, you take out your notebook and you don't have to think for hours what to draw. Very true. I keep actually this very small black book now, which I got at the workshop. And what's great is I don't care how crappy these drawings are, because this is like my little idea generator, like notes that I have for myself. And I think that's really great, because then if you want to draw something bigger, if you have like 5 hours in the day that you can dedicate to it, you can just pull out and be like, wow, I really like this thumbnail that I created. I'm going to, make that into something more. So I totally agree. Let's find 2 more. Ella says, I remember an old teacher of mine told me that we have 24 hours in one day and night, and that we could divide them into 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, and then 8 hours of leisure. And that really stuck with me. Oh, I like that. I feel like we often think that we don't have the time to do the things we want, but it's really just a matter of prioritizing. I know I caught myself scrolling Instagram for an hour or two while thinking about doing something that I feel like I don't have enough time to do at all. That's a very good quote. I like that a lot, Ella, actually. There are 8 hours of sleep, so obviously you can't do anything during those 8 hours. 8 hours work, and then 8 hours of leisure. That is a really great way to look at it. I think that puts into perspective for a lot of people how much time we actually do have in the day. Let's see here. I'll do one more. Okay, from someone that I haven't answered. Okay, Ghost Toot. So with time management like you're speaking, I'm a bricklayer, have been all my working life. By the time I get home from work, I'm fried physically and don't want to draw. What would help you pull out of a shitty energy cycle like this if you were in my place? Oh, see, this is a really good situation, because my brother is in construction, has been since he was like 16. And I look at what he does, and I can't fathom how he does this on a day-to-day. He wakes up at like 5, he goes to work, and then he comes home around 6. To me, that is insane. And he has 4 kids. And that's why I think I look to my brother and my sister as such inspiration, because I think they're doing jobs that are physically so demanding and tolling that I feel for them, because even though art is mentally straining, I feel that I'm not physically tired, because our bodies are a machine that we have to, take care of and maintain. And when your actual job is putting yourself through laborious labor or laborious tasks, I feel that it's hard to have any motivation to do anything when you get home from work. So in that way, I feel for you. And I've talked to a couple of people that have physical labor, and the way that they say that they manage it, or at least this one person, if you leave for work at, let's say, 7 a.m., what they do is they actually wake up an hour earlier, and they have an hour to themselves where they just draw. So they go to bed earlier. They might go to bed at like 8, but then they wake up around like 4 or 5. And then during those hours before you even go to work, that's when you can really get stuff done, and you aren't tired because you just woke up, and you have the most energy that you could possibly have during the day. Definitely more than you might when you come home from a whole day of laying bricks. So that you almost have to work and create a schedule that works for you. And that's why when I talk to artists, I try to find out their situation and what they're working with and what they're working against, and how that can work for them personally. So even though it might not sound the most pleasant, or it doesn't have the prettiest of wrapping on the advice I'm giving, I feel like waking up earlier and going to bed earlier to have that time in the morning before you go to draw. Or even if that is something that sounds really awful, when you come home from work, give yourself like an hour or 2 of leisure, whether that's like you cook for yourself, you're watching a show, whatever it might be, and then just be like, you know what, tonight I'm going to draw for 30 minutes, maybe an hour, at least 30, and we'll see if it goes anywhere from there, but at least 30 minutes. And it's almost like you have to push yourself, but I do hear how strenuous that is, and just know that I give you a lot of credit, because I don't think a lot of us could do that every day. Okay, so that was my stream on setting goals and my advice on what that means, and especially since it's the start of 2019, I hope this has been helpful for you guys. I feel like I'm losing my way of talk because I just said helpful instead of helpful. So I need to go eat. I need to get some substance. I just talked for 2 hours straight. So thank you guys for listening to me ramble. But yes, I do these live streams every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time. Next week, I'm going to be talking about the 9 artists that influenced me most in 2018. And that's going to be showing their work, why they influenced me, and why I think maybe they should be part of the people that influence you. And not all of them are alive, which I'm learning more about how I'm being inspired from people that are long gone, and their voice and their craft still speaks volumes to me, even though I can't actually physically hear them. So yeah, hopefully you can make it next week, and thank you all for coming. This was a great stream. I feel like I don't know. It just felt like a good start to the new year. So thank you guys. And thank you for all those that had been following the stream for a while. I'm going to continue doing these this year. I'll probably do more of these where I'm just kind of talking because I'm realizing that I can get a lot more said, and hopefully it's more helpful for you guys to listen while you're drawing. And that's kind of the goal for these streams, is you can be drawing and listening. And yeah. And yeah, I have my new Patreon update coming in a couple weeks. We have our critique stream coming, I think, January 23rd. So if you want to be a part of that, find the Discord below and submit your entries. And then we also have a emoji contest going on right now on our Discord channel. So you could have a permanent emoji on our community. And that's something that it's a very fun and lighthearted way to start off the year, but it's something that I'm excited to see what is created. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next week, hopefully. Okay, bye, and happy 2019 to everyone. I hope we make it a really awesome year. Let's start off strong and get some good art made. Okay, bye, everyone. Bye.